The Federation of Medical and Sales Representatives Association of India, or FMRAI, has moved the Supreme Court with a petition. It wants the Apex Court to direct the centre to give the Uniform Code of Pharmaceutical Marketing Practices, or UCPMP, a statutory basis to curb alleged unethical practices of pharma companies. The NGO, which had moved the court in March, wants an effective monitoring mechanism, transparency, accountability, and consequences for violations of the code. Now, during the course of the hearing, the petitioner has accused the makers of Dolo 650 of allegedly bribing doctors with freebies worth 1,000 crore rupees to recommend the pills. On its part, Microlabs Limited, which makes the drug, has denied the allegations as baseless. About a month ago, the Income Tax Department had conducted raids at the drug makers' offices for alleged tax evasion. Another petition, which had reached the Supreme Court recently, had claimed that pharma companies were giving freebies such as gold coins, LCD TVs, fridges, laptops, and more to medical practitioners who, in turn, would ostensibly create awareness about their drugs and health supplements. The government too has acknowledged in Parliament that it has received complaints of unethical practices by pharma firms. The impact is that doctors might over-medicate you, the patient, or push you towards buying more expensive alternatives. Doctors, on their part, are bound by a code of conduct that prohibits them from accepting gifts from pharma firms. But the firms continue to operate with minimum constraints. And big money is involved. According to a Citizen Civic Action Group analysis, between 2008 and 9 and 2016 and 17, the 7 largest Indian pharma firms spent 34,187 crore rupees on marketing. At present, there is no regulator for pharmaceutical marketing practices. Unless the UCPMP gets statutory backing, there will be no associated monitoring or regulating body. To rein in these firms, the government brought in the Uniform Code of Pharmaceutical Marketing Practices in 2015. The code was brought in as a voluntary set of guidelines that would prevent pharma firms and their agents from plying doctors with gifts and cash to increase their sales and profits. But it has been found that these rules are being flouted without any major repercussions. It falls upon pharma associations to enforce the code, and they don't have the power or the incentive to punish erring firms. This code is yet to be legally implemented. That could change with the Supreme Court hearing the petition. It has now asked for the centre's response. So, why is it still a voluntary code and not legally binding on companies? Ramesh Sundar, the president of the Federation of Medical and Sales Representatives Associations of India, told Business Standard that the government had been dragging its feet for several years on implementing the UCPMP. A previous Business Standard report said that sector watchers believe that the code is caught up in a tussle between the Department of Pharmaceuticals, or DOP, which comes under the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, and the Union Ministry of Health. Malini Aisola, co-convener All India Drug Action Network, said that ethical marketing and promotion should be brought within the ambit of the new Drugs, Medical Devices and Cosmetics Act being formulated. If that happens, the role of the nodal ministry, which would administer the statutory provisions, would shift to the Union Health Ministry. But the DOP does not want to give up its turf.
A practice of providing some sort of a freebie, again, can be divided into multiple categories, right? One is where you are providing something for the purposes of education, right? Or you are providing something in the form of a brand reminder. These are things that as an industry practice needs to be done so that the healthcare practitioner is aware of the company, their products, and it will actually be for the betterment of the patient itself. Where there is an issue is where there is an incentive to prescribe. And that incentive to prescribe is what needs to be prevented. Now, the penal sanction for healthcare practitioners begins at rupees 1,000, right? And that is why you find that low value items technically don't actually trigger that penal sanction. But there is still a lot of ambiguity in terms of how many times can I provide a low value item legally. Yeah. A pharma company today is not prohibited from providing these kind of undertaking these kind of activities to healthcare practitioners. The restrictions apply on the healthcare practitioner side. There is no principal legislation under which you can put down the UCPMP. The effective way to do this would be to create an anti-kickback statute, right? And in that anti-kickback statute, we have to really balance the interests of the patient as well as the industry as well.
The Medical Council of India's regulations prohibits doctors from accepting gifts, travel facilities, hospitality, and cash or monetary grants from pharmaceutical companies. There is another law that comes into play.
If we see the Prevention of Corruption Act, while it is applicable in relation to undue gratification given to public servants, the question arises whether a medical practitioner is a public servant. Now, the Supreme Court has earlier, in one of the judgments, held that officials of a bank, including a private bank, are public servants. Can we draw analogy here to extend it to medical practitioners? Is there a need for the government to now look into even the uniform code for pharmaceutical marketing practices to now be given a statutory status? Could they do it by incorporating something similar what they did for advertisements under the Consumer Protection Act by bringing a separate regulation for this aspect also? Maybe the answer lies there.
At the time of the publication of the UCPMP, the government had informally communicated to the industry that failure to comply with the code by the industry as a whole would force it to make UCPMP mandatory. Given the patchy adoption of the code by the industry, the government may be left with no option but to enforce the code as a law.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.